Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 2. Hello guys, thank you for downloading part 2 on our Cars episode, going up to 100 miles an hour. On our 100th episode. Thank you very much. It's been really nice getting to this stage and you're still sticking with us and we're still going strong. And I thought it would be kind of cool to start like a new feature at the start of part 2 where I kind of just read out some responses that people have said for their favorite films of the subject. So last week we did trilogies, and the Movie Boners podcast said Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Great choice. And a regular responder, Anton Kinnelov's response is Iron Man 3, which I think is a great shout as well. I think it's much maligned sometimes, and I'm a big fan of that film as well. So that is a great choice. So yeah, keep them coming. Keep your responses coming, and we'll give you a shout out. So our choice then for car films is Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. I think originally it was called Mad Max 2, but I don't think a lot of American audiences at the time saw the first Mad Max film. So they changed it to The Road Warrior. And I guess since then it's been known as Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. Yeah. Other films in contention: Drive, 2011's Drive from Nicholas Winding Refn with Ryan Gosling. I really do like that. It's a great little noir film. Very noirish, David.
Yes, I do approve. Very nice, yeah. Very good.
Steven Spielberg's Duel, his TV movie that kind of kicked off his career. That's a great one. And Death Proof, Tarantino's grindhouse film. Probably arguably the worst film of his catalogue, but I still kind of like the car action in that.
Yeah.
With that girl's leg flying across the road.
Yeah, that was fucking incredible.
In the car crash. Yeah. That was funny.
And also really shocking because it's like they were all the main characters halfway through the movie.
So, Boaz, you picked Mad Max 2 from the list that I sent you. So what happens in Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior?
So Mad Max 2 takes place probably a couple of years after the first one. And in that time, society has gone to hell. There's been some sort of nuclear war between two, I think they say in the prologue, tribes or whatever, but it's probably like the Soviets and the Americans or what have you. So everybody is dead, or most people are dead, except for Australia, which seems to be fine. But it is a desolate desert wasteland, which it kind of usually is anyway, but a little more. Basically, society has collapsed, government's collapsed, law and order, and there are roving bands of basically GIMP-looking
gangs.
Yeah, car gangs, bike gangs. And the currency in this wasteland is fuel, which they call gasoline. Mad Max gets involved in a gunfight with one of these tribes, who is led by this guy called Humongous, or the Great Humongous, or something like that, who is this, full masked wearing German gimp. It's pretty surreal. So Max finds that there's a group of people, a group of survivors who have a fueling station, which they guard with, all kinds of stuff. It's got huge walls, and there are families that live there. Humongous wants the fuel station for his own and the precious gasoline. And Max is only agreeing to help them in so much as it helps himself. he does a deal where he'll get a few, a full tank of gasoline for his car, and then he's just going to go off. So he's not really like a selfless hero. He's very much doing this for a specific selfish purpose. This deal also comes about because he saves one of the group who are ambushed by Humongus's gang, and most of them are murdered, and he's like on the verge of death, and he promises Max, a full tank of fuel if he gets him home, and he dies. But Max, has this extended deal where he'll get them a lorry to transport their fuel. But yeah, so cut to the juicy part. He obviously has a change of heart and comes to the rescue and saves them and destroys all the bad guys.
Cool. Have you seen this one before, Boaz, or is this the first time watch?
I actually haven't. Yeah, this is the first time. So my history with Mad Max, I've always been meaning to see this. I've even talked to my dad about this quite a lot. So I watched Mad Max Fury Road first. That was the very first Mad Max film I watched.
Yeah,
I think that's a great film because even if you're like a Mad Max head, or if you know nothing about Mad Max, it's just like a great soft reboot. You can just go in there not knowing anything.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. We've talked about that on one of our podcasts. I love that film. I think it's a great film.
Post-apocalyptic films.
Yeah. So on the TV a long time ago, there was the first Mad Max. So I gave that a watch, and that is so different. I think it's so different even than the second film. And I've watched the beginning of the third film. I need to properly watch that. But yeah, you think Mad Max, you think post-apocalyptic. The first one really isn't. It's kind of like he's a policeman. This is a gang that shot his wife. So it's it's a cop revenge crime movie thing. And then the second one is full-blown, post-apocalyptic wasteland, modern mythology sort of thing.
Quite a turn.
Yeah, it's really a massive turn. But then that's what it's known for, not really the first movie. So anyway, I thought, I should definitely watch it. And I did. And yeah, it's pretty good. And a lot of the elements I quite liked from Fury Road are present, in this one, definitely. Yeah, very enjoyable.
David, initial reactions?
Initial reactions, I would say, because very strange, actually. My experience is literally almost exactly the same as Boaz's.
Okay.
My first ever experience of the Mad Max world was also Mad Max Fury Road. Okay. Although personally, I'd rather they would have called it Furiosa Road, because really, she's the main character.
Yeah, she is essentially the main character, yeah.
Which, no problems with that at all, because, like you, Boaz, I do love the visual style of it. I've also watched the black and white, noir version, as it were, the black and white version they did of it, the Chromecast version, which was really accentuates certain elements of the cinematography. It makes it look really intensely cool, and even cooler and better in places than visually than it does in color. But the color version, the original, is great to watch as well. But like I said, I watched that one first, so then I worked my way back. And when I watched this one, the initial, and again, it was the first time I'd ever seen this, because it's the one that everyone talks about, but I've never really got around to doing it, and I finally have. And like Boaz says, there's a lot of visual similarities between things that are quite comparable to Mad Max 2, Road Warrior, and Fury Road. I feel like the post-apocalyptic nature of both of them is very similar. And that's where they got the inspiration. They've definitely taken the style of the Mad Max world from number 2 for Fury Road. And I just think, it's what it is. It's not my favorite film in the world. It's not something I'm going to rush to watch again, but that doesn't mean it's terrible. I would say, it's enjoyable to watch. Like you say, Boaz, the first one is very much just a cop revenge thriller, where he's just, it's basically John Wick, but in an Australian policeman.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah.
It's that's the same motivations they do in John Wick as they do in the first Mad Max, whereas this one is right in the midst of the world of...
It's more Carfu.
Post-apocalyptic world, and, there's several... We'll get into the shots and stuff as we do later, but there are several, visual elements of this film that I just love. The story is the story, and we'll get into that in a minute as well, but I do love the way this film looks. That's the one thing I'd say as my first impression of the way it was shot. For a film that was from 1981, it pretty damn good in terms of its visuals. Like, I'm not saying the 80s were bad on visuals, but you definitely had some stinkers, and this was not one of them. So, personally, in my opinion, but initially, very fast paced, very good, and just enjoyable from start to finish, really. Nice slice of 80s post apocalyptic, really.
Yeah, for me, I had actually seen Mad Max 1 and 2 before Fury Road, so my experience was different. Like, when I first saw this, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. This is one of the best action films I've ever seen. Yeah. And then I watched Fury Road and my mind was blown.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, how can they top Fury Road? But they did by like a long way.
Yeah.
A massively long way.
Yeah, because basically the entire chase scene in the end of the second one really does remind me of Fury Road. But with Fury Road, the entire thing is that fucking chase scene. Like,
pretty much. But then I watch it again for this, The Road Warrior. I'm like, it's good, but it really puts a downer on it when you've seen Mad Max Fury Road quite a few times. So it's just like, I remember this being amazing. It's still very good, but I'm like,
it's one of those things you get kind of spoiled with the grandeur of sequels. But yeah, it's obviously far more apocalyptic in the fourth one and far more like larger, you know, where you're like, you know, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of vehicles. You know?
Yeah, but I feel like George Miller really pushed the boundaries of what he could do in 1981.
Yeah, especially because I'd heard that both Mad Max and Mad Max 2 like were done on a shoestring budget.
Yeah,
you know, Mad Max 1 most especially, but even Mad Max 2 was a tiny fucking budget. And, you know, that he was able to do anything with it at all.
Yeah, and I read as well that they were pretty much making it up as they went along for this film, which blows my mind.
To be honest, you say that, and I can literally... It blows my mind as well when you say that, but I can kind of see it. I can kind of see that. I can kind of see it a little bit. Like, it's so... Particularly with the second one, because of the post-apocalyptic nature of it and the fact we're actually in that world rather than the revenge side of things in the first one... I can kind of see that they were like, you know, just roll with the punches. Just, you know, it's very much, I feel like when you say shoestring budget for this thing, like when you think of some of the great films of the 80s or even like the late 70s, early 80s, you think of the likes of Halloween, that was done on next to nothing. You think of the first Nightmare on Elm Street, next to nothing compared to like the later sequels and, you know, anything of that time. I do think that for what it is, it's very impressive. Like, you know, the visuals are good. The acting's not too bad either. You know, it's generally enjoyable from start to finish. It's a nice piece of popcorn cinema.
I like the sets as well. So there's one main set, you know, most of it is just desert and stuff and vehicles and wreckages. Yeah. But I love the makeshift fort gas station.
With flamethrowers.
Yeah, with the flamethrowers and with all the barricades and all the other stuff. I just think, and trap. You know, underground stuff. I just thought,
So directing then, like the opening car chase is pretty cool, like, and it shows you right from the off that Max is an intelligent character and a skilled driver compared to the gang chasing him. Like, Max easily drives around the obstacles in the road, whereas the gang members in the car just drive straight through it. Then when the guy on the quad tries to shoot Max with an arrow, Max slams on the brakes and the guy takes out the other guy on the other side of the road. Then I loved what George Miller does with the scare at the end of the scene, where he puts a load of effort in the direction in showing the guy's hand in the crushed buggy thing with loads of fast push-ins. You know, George is saying, hey, look at this. This is scary, right? Then Max opens the door of the truck and then... boom, a jump scare with a body falling out of the truck. That was great. I thought that was amazing. But then you get like drawn straight back into this world, what this world really is like, and what's been lost when Max picks up a little music box playing the tune of Happy Birthday, I think it is. So it's really interesting juxtaposition to open in establishing this tone. I thought that opening scene was tremendous. I think also, like, this film, like, treads a fine line sometimes of it being too campy and ridiculous in its tone.
I think especially with the leather.
Yeah, with its designs and costumes.
Yeah,
I think especially with, what was it? I can't remember the name of the character, but I think he actually stands out far more than Lord Humongous or whatever.
Oh, Wes.
But his henchman, Wes, is it with the red hair and the coloured hair and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what pisses me off with him is every time you see him from the back, he has a butt flap. Why the fuck have you got a butt flap, man?
Yeah. Well, I think it's because he swings a certain way. in the film.
I think it might be so
Easy access.
yeah. Oh, he just doesn't mind shitting in the desert. He wants to shit
Possibly.
shit standing.
I mean, to be fair, you're in the middle of the apocalypse. I think the last thing you're going to be caring about is where you shit at night, but who knows? But no, I think the thing with that character as well, with Wes, like, when you watch the trailer for it, or one of the trailers that you watch for it, and one of these shots in the film, when you see him from the front with those goggles on, I don't know why, but I feel like he looks like Christopher Lloyd, and I'm not doing it to link to the last episode. I genuinely think he looks like Christopher Lloyd at a glance. He looks like, I'm just like, what why is Doc in this? Like,
yeah. Yeah, another link, I guess, from Back to the Future Part 3. It had Michael J. Fox's butt crack in it, so we thought we would oblige this next episode with having a character with
butt crack for a butt crack,
his ass hanging out.
because why not?
Yeah.
No.
Can we have that as a theme for a movie, like butt crack movies with the most butt cracks?
Maybe that should be our next episode. Best movies with butt cracks.
Yeah,
Possibly.
and we've got to score the butt crack, not the film, just the butt crack.
Jesus Christ.
This is getting dark now. Let's get back to Mad Men.
This is what Boaz Dix gives you people on episode 100.
Yeah,
Butt crack central.
it's not too late to unsubscribe. Turn this off.
Yes. Time to turn back.
But I think where Miller balances the tone out is with the violence. There's a moment where, like, Emil Minty, who plays the feral kid, like, throws a boomerang into the head of one of the goons, and there's kind of blood everywhere, and one of them tries to catch it, and his fingers get chopped off, and even the scene before where one of the goons rapes a woman, like,
yeah, that was full on. That was really quite shocking.
yeah. So the film really needs those harsh moments, harsh, dark moments, I think. Otherwise, the film just looks really stupid and ridiculous. So I think the tone is balanced out with the violence.
Yeah, I think you've got to, because it's like the bad guys are wearing like ridiculous clothes. Like, it's like they take it from the bargain bin of an BDSM club, just whatever the hell nobody would buy.
I mean,
so they look pretty bad, but yeah, they are pure evil. And, so you definitely do relish in the fact that anytime Max kills one of these motherfuckers.
I think that's the one thing I like about the most as well, is the fact that whilst, yes, it's so low budget that some of it, like Boaz points out very nicely and very eloquently, that it looks like it's coming from a knockoff BDSM shop. I do think that, like, the way that the actors have been directed, like the direction of just the story, the way it goes, it's all, it's taken seriously, even though it doesn't always look as serious as it should do, with its costuming choices and, like, the budget that they were restricted to. I do think that the way it is directed, it goes in a very, where you're going in a way. Like, it's not predictable then, but the direction you're going in. And when something unexpected happens, like, that balance of violence, you get that nice sort of scale of going from, oh, that was a bit, but then at the same time, you're like, what, that was actually, I should expect something like that, because we're in the middle of, this crazy atmosphere that is this post-apocalyptic world. So, I do agree that it's very much, despite the look of it in places, it's definitely got the right, the right tone overall, I think. And it's not, it hasn't driven into mad, like, I don't know, crappy comedy parody of what a post-apocalyptic future could be. It's very, like, the violence, I think, is the bit that levels it the most, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the middle action scene where Max brings back the truck and the gang chases Max is fine. There are a lot of, like, shaky camera shots in there, but I didn't mind that too much, as it tries to add to the intensity. Like, There's some cool like gyrocopter shots, but I think the best bits are the crashes. Like there's one near the start of the scene where like a car crashes into another one and a guy is working underneath the car and crushes his legs. That was great. And then one literally is flying through the air and hitting like a wrecked car in midair. That was really cool. But I feel like a lot of the action was focused on like the fight following in the compound where the flamethrowers and Wes leaping around. So I would have preferred more like driving action personally, but I feel it was pretty solid. I mean, would you have preferred more driving action in that scene, or were you fine with Wes like bouncing around, headbutting a dude and then going?
I mean, I would say, I don't know. I think the amount of driving action we had throughout the whole thing was the right amount personally. I mean, yeah, admittedly, you could have had a bit more, but then the minute you start adding more to what you already have, you're at risk of, getting to that stage of losing like the feel of the whole film. Like if you basically end up with an 80s version of the Fast and Furious where you've just got like very limited I mean, arguably as visually as good as it is Fury Road, really, like the characterization isn't the key thing. It's a big visual, like the characterization is less of a spoken word thing than it is a physical thing, then, shall we say. Obviously, you do have spoken word in that film, like in most films. And
mainly grunting.
Yeah, mostly grunting. But, I just think if you did too much, then it would be a little bit too, like, I don't want to say poetic, it's the wrong word, but if that makes sense, more visually side of it. So, I personally didn't have a problem with the amount of, like, the ratio of car action to person-on-person action, be that BDSM based or not.
So were you quite happy with that action scene then? A fairly short chase scene, and then mainly fisticuffs in the compound with Wes?
I would say so, because personally, right, like, I do like an extended action sequence, but at the end of the day, I think you've got to get into the heads of these characters and what's going on in this world.
Yeah,
and you can only tell that so much to a certain extent with the driving action. Like you can say, oh, look at the landscape, it's desolate, look at the cars, they're all like manufactured and like, they're clearly not of a sleek design that you would expect from a modern day or present day as it was at the time in the 80s. It's all very cannibalized then, whereas you won't truly get the extent of how cannibalized the world is until you get to see the characterization like bouncing off each other. Admittedly, I don't know, they could have played it a bit differently, but I don't know. I can't really fault it too much, considering it's my first experience of the film. I think it honestly it hit the right marks for me personally. But if I watched it again, I might come back with a different opinion. But for now, I'm quite happy with that balance personally, in my opinion. There.
Yeah, I think I probably maybe just wanted a bit more car action and a little bit less of the Wes bouncing around stuff. But that's only me. I think like favorite scene is definitely the final chase. It's pretty extraordinary with the tanker. It's so good and still holds up for me. Like I love the bit where a buggy car like throws a hook on the back of the tanker, but it just flips the buggy and it just gets dragged and smashed up on the road, bouncing all around, all over the place. That looked amazing, even though it was kind of stupid from the guy in the buggy. But there we go. A lot of like the car action is really clear, and you know exactly what's going on, and the cameras are kind of really close to them at low angles, which I really loved. Which is just really kind of surprising in that kind of era as well, that the fact that you can get the cameras so close. I really love that.
Yeah.
And there's some great sunset shots in the chase with the dust hitting the light. That's so beautifully done. But there's a bit where like the feral kid tries to get a shotgun shell that's on the hood of the tanker, and then Wes pops up, and it's supposed to be like a jump scare, but it didn't work for me at all. And I think it was because the arm comes through the shot first before we cut to Wes's face screaming. So I didn't see why we needed the arm coming through first in that point, and it kind of kills the shot for me in that moment. But when the tanker crashes into Humongous' car, that was pretty spectacular. His car just disintegrates into shards of metal. That was pretty awesome. And even the tanker just going over, I thought they kind of manipulated that in the editing quite well, of making it massive. I mean, what are our favorite bits in the final chase that we love.
Oh man, there's quite a lot of stuff I quite like. I like when they jump onto the tanker and there's fighting around the tanker, as it were. So where Max is like looking for shells for his shotgun, there's most of them are like all over the place, and he's trying to load the damn thing, and they're everywhere. They're shooting. I like that bit where he shoots a bolt like straight for his nuts, and it's like between it goes between him, like on the seat, and then he blows that guy away. Actually, he doesn't even blow that guy away. He's going to, and then a guy from the side comes and he blows that guy through the window, and then shoots the guy at the top. I thought that was done really well.
Yeah, I do love it. I think just the cinematography, just the way it's shot, like the whole film, like that end sequence, obviously that's the one. Yeah. That's the one for all of us. I think we can all unanimously agree that it's one of the best parts of it. Particularly there's the one shot which I think might be the bit that Boaz just said, actually, because obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've only watched this once, so I'm very vague with it. But it's with Max himself, where he's literally, there's a shot and he's got the gun and he's like that, and it's like you were saying earlier about how close things are, and like I just love how close the barrel of the gun is to the camera lens, like how close you can see it. And I also I love the bit with, I'm pretty sure it's Wes, where he's like, and it's in one of the shots that reminds me of Fury Road as well, where it's shot so closely, it's almost like a deep focus kind of thing. Like you see him in focus and he's at the front and he's there like really crazy, but it's almost like creates like a triangle effect, as it were, like looking in, like, so it's very like focused on him, but it's like deep focus, nothing really in focus in the background, but you can like, and I think he's got somebody else on the truck with him. I love the sort of the way it's all shot, and there is one other shot I do have that I do like, but I'll let you guys sort of riff on what I just said there, because I do like the way that whole sequence and just the general camera work is used throughout the whole of this film, really.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable how clear this action scene, well, all the action scenes are. I mean, we spoke about it a lot when we covered Fury Road, where George Miller very much places the action in the center of the frame. Like, so what's important is always in the middle, and you still get this here. So it's kind of great how that philosophy has come from this film as well. That's always been important to him,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I like how he does his action scenes, and you just kind of build them up. You have a lot, the stakes raising, and more things going on just through the fight scene, and it gets really intense and almost to the point of nearly being overwhelming. There's so much, but you know what's going on in each part. It's very well framed. There's one bit where there's a bunch of guys on the top of the truck, good guys, and they're fighting all the bad guys that are trying to jump on. One of the good guys, he's got like a Molotov cocktail, and he gets shot, and the Molotov cocktail bursts, and like he's on fire. But one of the things I thought was crazy, I was like, oh, he's fucked. But it was only his hands on fire, but he's like, I'm okay, it's fine.
Don't worry, I've got my handy bag of water with me. It's fine.
Yeah. He's got a bag of water. Yeah. I thought he was a gunner, but
I have just the thing for this moment.
I thought he was a gunner, and then the girl gets killed actually, like in front of him, when she's like kicking ass and stuff, which was pretty shocking. I didn't know she was gonna die.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
But I was kind of saying before, like with the jump scare with Wes, that didn't really work for me at all. And like, I kind of wish they didn't really put that in there or directed it like it was more of a. I kind of wish it was more of a suspenseful sequence rather than a horror sequence. Because he doesn't really do that in Fury Road at all, like with jump scares at all. So that was the only bit that was kind of disappointing for me. Sure. That wasn't edited amazingly, but other than that, it's a great scene.
So another kind of shot that I quite like, it's not an action shot, but I suppose it's got practical effects, is where Humongous like crucifies or sets these guys on fire for like a like a symbol of, do you know what I mean? Like he captured some of them, and he's got them tied up to like the frames of cars or whatever, and then sets them alight, so they're kind of crucified alive. So, that's pretty nasty. But I also just like the way it's done, like just how it's out, the lighting, the fact that it's so dark and you can't even see them. They're kind of silhouetted. And then, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And, pretty menacing. That was a great shot.
Yeah, it's kind of combining the nasty and the beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're like, wow, this is fucked up, but actually, it looks pretty awesome. These guys on fire, mate.
Yeah, it's interesting. They cut away from that pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, with the ratings board. And it's pretty gnarly as well when, like, was it the two guys that are strapped on the front of Humongous's car and they get squished by the tanker? That was, ugh.
I know. I was like, you poor motherfucker.
That was pretty gory.
Because, they're hostages and then they got smashed. So I think what's great is I wish I'd watched it, like, originally. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I didn't watch Fury Road. Because a lot of concepts get more fleshed out, actually, in Fury Road. Like, the fact hostages on the front of their cars and those guys got Max actually, he accidentally killed those two people, but he is like that at the beginning of Fury Road. He is strapped to the front of a goddamn car,
Yeah, you get, when you watch the older ones, you get that sense of like clarity. You get like of what everything means. So for anyone who has watched Fury Road first, like me and Bo has, I do feel like you'll benefit from watching these earlier ones because it'll become a lot more clear as to what the hell is going on.
Yeah, I think it elaborates on like concepts that are in Fury Road. You go, oh, okay.
It's interesting comparing like Fury Road to this one because as well as like Fury Road is an incredible piece of work and for me definitely one of the best films of this decade. Well, if not this century, really, it's pretty remarkable piece of filmmaking, but there is an element of like artifice to it. There's a lot of like digital work in there with the cinematography and post, and obviously there's that big sandstorm scene. But with this is like purely
practical,
getting your hands dirty, filmmaking, and to the max of what they could do, what they could possibly do. And I really kind of appreciate that. There's no like touch ups here. They all had to do it
for real
and get it right on the day. And I just feel like I really appreciate that still, even watching it now. Like if you mess it up, you got to do it again. And like if you messed it up to a certain extent in Fury Road, you can kind of fix it a little bit. So I just love that kind of fact of in this film, like what you see is what you get, and like this is what they've created. Whereas in Fury Road, you still have that, but there's a little bit of like, a computer has helped a little bit. Yeah. Just being an old-fashioned critique there, but I still think that's important to point out. So directing score, David, what's your score for Mad Max 2?
I say because it's very high octane from start to finish, really. I don't think there's ever really a dull moment for me, and this is like very fresh opinion because I've only watched this once. I would say, cinematography, pacing and tone, all considered, probably going to scare you a bit because I'll go a bit high, but I'd say like an 8.6 maybe, 8.7. Okay. I'd say 8.7. I'll settle for 8.7, I'd say. 8.7.
What should we go with then, Boaz? Solid 9?
Oh, okay. That would be interesting.
I want to go higher. 8.8?
Yeah, 8.8. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Screenplay then. Like, I found the opening montage interesting that they didn't really go into any specifics about how like the world is how it destroyed itself, and it's more of a poetic way of doing it, and there are like no countries mentioned, even though they kind of, the voiceover is clearly Australian. They even use like real historical footage to like ground it. Also, I don't think you really need to see Mad Max to fully appreciate this film as well, so I kind of like that as well.
No, I think it does a pretty good summation of what the first movie was. It's like, he was a cop, his family got murdered, and now he got revenge, and now he really doesn't care about anybody. I think that's a fairly concise. But I think when you're talking about the wider world building, the first Mad Max didn't really have that. It kind of was just set in modern Australia. The prologue also has to to kind of explain why the fuck everybody's wearing leather and where are the towns and cities and where's the law, why is Guzzolene? There's so many things, Guzzolene, all this stuff, scavengers.
But I thought it was just really poetically done. I thought it was great.
I thought it was poetically done. I thought it's quite concise, and I like because what was it? The lack of specifics and the sort of more poetic language makes a lot of sense towards the end when you realize that it's the child that's saying this.
Yeah.
So he doesn't actually know the specifics, and it kind of makes sense that he tells it like it's some sort of the prologue to an epic poem, or it's very poetic, because it's probably this handed down story where all of the facts have sort of been gutted out, and it's just
Did you feel like you wanted more voiceover for that reveal that he was the kid to feel a bit better? Or?
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded more voiceover like throughout the movie, and because I kind of forgot about the voiceover guy from the beginning, and then at the end, and I liked how it tied that in, and I thought it would have been a better, oh wow, it's the kid moment if throughout there were little voiceovers, and then you go, who's doing the voiceover? Is it like some omnipresent guy, or is it Max in his old age? And then it's like, oh, it's the kid. That's good. I think that would have hit a little harder.
Yeah, I suppose it would have been like nicer. I mean, obviously, it's the sort of thing that nowadays I think we'd expect to happen, definitely. But back then, I suppose voiceovers were like very much a thing of like the 50s and the 60s, and like they made you probably associate them with like newsreel footage and stuff of like someone, like you imagine like the old newsreels of like 1940s Britain and stuff like that, or even in America where like you get the 50s like Hollywood coverage and stuff of like movie premieres. Oh, and here's so and so coming to this. I think lots of people are so used to a format of being told what they can see. I feel like that's why it's not as much as it could have been, because they want the audience to make their own sort of mind up with a little bit of a guiding hand, which, I think it does work, but I do agree that it would have been nice to have more of that punch, get that realization and that punch right at the end that, oh my God, that's who it is. But I think it works for what it is, but I do admit it could have been changed up. But it works either way, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it works either way. And even if you have extra voiceover, I don't think you need too much more. You don't want to have a good third of it, just the odd scene here and there.
Yeah, just the odd scene. And basically maybe, anything that's too exposition-y, you can just, instead of somebody explaining it to Max, like, you just have it randomly come across. So I think where I'm sort of comparing voiceover is what was it, the Coward, the assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. Like, that has quite a lot of voiceover, but all of that voiceover is kind of necessary because he's like just adding some poetic language into what was the time like, or
more context and poeticism in one, I suppose.
Because there are plenty of scenes where Max is just on his own, contemplating what to do next. So I feel like there is plenty of room to put it in there.
Yeah. And he doesn't exactly talk out loud either. So you've got to sort of guess what's going on in his mind.
Yeah, Mel Gibson really doesn't have that many lines in this. So
no.
The story in this film is really simple, where like basically Max helps out this group of people at this gasoline compound in exchange for gas. And when Max's contract is fulfilled, Max goes on his own way, but gets caught by the gang, and his really nice car gets destroyed, and his dog gets killed. Very sad moment.
Yeah, and he becomes John Wick again.
Yes.
And when the gyro captain takes him back to the compound, Max is like, "I'm driving that tanker," and then the leader, Papagallo, is basically like, yeah, right. So there's just not a lot of debate within the group about whether Max should drive the rig, the tanker.
Well, they debate it a little because they say to him like,
really.
you don't look like you can drive a wheelchair or something. But then he quickly is like, stop mucking around. I'm the best chance you got.
Yeah,
and then that just kills the conversation. He just gives him the keys.
But I kind of wanted more of that, really. And also, I didn't feel like Max isn't angry enough.
Yeah, I think it would be good because like he abandoned them. They should be pissed off. They should be go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, he should be demanding to drive the tanker. He should be demanding to drive the tanker, wanting to take revenge.
yeah.
You know, John Wick style.
Oh,
But they
yeah.
just move on very quickly, and I found that a little disappointing, especially because you have like a scene before that where Papagallo is practically begging Max to drive the tanker before that, you know, and Max punches him.
Yeah.
And I was just expecting something more dramatic when Max comes back. So that was I feel like they could have made it a lot more dramatic in some areas of the script for me.
Yeah, sure.
Did you feel like that, David? Like when Max comes back, it could have been more dramatic. You wanted more from Mel Gibson, or was it all right for you?
I mean, I think it served its purpose, but then I do think that that's the one thing about Mad Max, like the saga in general. Like, he is the main character, but there's always that essence of, like, I think the first one does it, like, you know, it's really all about him. It's all about how he struggles to, like, with his mind, and he's losing it, and he's just, after the loss of his family and everything like that.
Yeah.
The ones that follow subsequently, I do think that there could be a bit more drama, a bit more conflict, especially by the time you get to like the likes of Fury Road, where the most dramatic thing you get is a grunt. But I think that in this one, I don't know. I think it was all right, but I don't know. If I viewed it again, I might have a different opinion. But I just think that he could have had a bit more of a dramatic presence in that set, or a dramatic sense about him then, as it were, when he returns. But I don't know. Like, I suppose we might be guilty of, you know, comparing it to the way we're used to, and like the way heroes turn up in modern cinema, where we expect to have that big punchy like reveal of the hero when they come back. You know, I just think it's very understated, but then like it works. Yeah. But I'm not too sure. Like, I'm still undecided on that point, I would say.
Okay, yeah, because I think maybe a counter argument to my own argument is the fact that you're going too against like Mad Max's character. Like, it would just feel strange and out of character.
I think he's a man of few words. He's never happy, and he probably doesn't get very angry or whatever. But it's just like, listen, I'll do this. Give me gas. Listen, I've done it. I'm going home.
Yeah, let me drive the fucking tanker. I can do this. Just trust me.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to drive this fucking tanker, and you're going to give me extra gas. That's it. And then, you know, just gets on with it.
Yeah.
I don't think he probably isn't the type to try and make his case. It's just like...
But still, personally, I think that there could have just been a little bit more of a debate in that part. But
yeah,
even thinking about the title, Mad Max, I feel like in this film, the mad part in the title is more about this world. This world is mad.
Yeah.
But just featuring Max.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean Max is the mad one.
Because the first one, he's mad. The second one, the world is mad.
Yeah, he is proper crazy in the first one. You know, he's kind of losing his marbles. Yeah, I think in all the other films, they never really capture the fact that he's nuts. I think you're right. They kind of switch to, it's the world he's inhabiting is pretty crazy. And he's quite indifferent, actually. He just wants to get his fuel and go the fuck home. You know, well, not go home, but just get his fuel and go.
I think truly he's only really mad the first one, and then in Fury Road as well, because, you know, like he's a man of few words still, but like it seems a bit crazier that he's just like, he's gone to a different form of communication where he just doesn't say much.
Yeah. He also hallucinates quite a bit in the fourth one.
He does, doesn't he? And the third one is purely only mad for one reason and one reason only. And I'm going to bring back my famous 2-word explanation here. Tina Turner. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. And it's interesting with the second twist as well. Well, the first one in the film, where the fact that the tanker just had dirt in it and the fuel was in the bus and Max didn't know about it.
I thought that was a pretty good twist. I thought that was great.
And you can see it as just as a decoy for the gang, but also as the good guys don't fully trust Max in driving the tanker, maybe.
Yeah.
So there is that reading of it with that reveal, I would say.
Yeah. I think it's a combination of the two. I think it's, you know, he believed that there was fuel in the tanker and they didn't trust him with the fuel. Because, you know, it's still not entirely decided if he's like a quote unquote good guy. like he obviously sees what the gang are doing is wrong, but he's not really willing to stick his neck out most of the time. So you never know. Like maybe he would have driven, even though he's like, the hero and what have you. Maybe he would have driven away with the fucking, you never get that that definite answer. Do you know what I mean? Like he never gets the chance. Yeah. So I think you can read it that he is the hero, or he's just still self-interested at the end. I think, but I think the villagers or whatever, they take that choice out of his hands. So he was just the distraction. They've got the fuel. So it does end up happily for them anyway. And you don't even get like what Max's opinion about that is, because he sees the sand, he just smiles. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is a bit of a stretch, but I feel like it's kind of maybe a little revisionist take on like the whole Catholicism aspect of coming back from the dead, resurrection, because obviously he was basically left for dead and he comes back, but he's not like a massive savior for them. Like he doesn't see himself as a massive savior, I don't think. He's just doing the job, as you kind of saying, Boaz. So I don't know whether that's a bit of a stretch to comment about that, but I think there definitely is in there.
Yeah, it could be. Like, when do you mean when he's like they blow up his car and they think he's dead? Yeah, I think maybe you could read it like that. Yeah, I think because not only is he their savior, but after the end, like he the narrator is even saying they still tell stories about him. He disappeared, nobody seen him, and he's still like wandering the wasteland, and and he seems like to be this folk hero in their imagination, who's still out there doing good. But but I don't think personally that's how he sees himself at all. So it does seem, I think you're right, like maybe he's become somewhat of a Jesus figure after his supposed death. He's thought of as more Christ-like, but
he doesn't think that himself at all.
I don't think he thinks that of himself at all, but I think that's kind of an interesting look. I never really thought about that. Maybe there is some Jesus imagery in this.
I mean, to be fair, the way that they tie people to the fronts of the vehicles, especially he actually gets tied to a vehicle himself, very much in the way that, like, if you think about it in that respect, like the way that they would tie them to the crosses is very much like that. So you could read it like that if you really wanted to.
Yeah, and when they set fire to those guys as an example, they're basically crucified. So I think crucifixion and symbols of crucifixion play a role.
Favorite lines, then, people? There aren't many, but I would say my favorite is, "You want to get out of here? You talk to me," from Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
That's a cool one. Also, a little one that, if you're listening carefully, you might catch it. I think it's when they're kind of preparing to leave, and one of them says, "Come on, catch the pigs," which is quite funny. But favorite line, David?
I would say, like you say, there's not many to pick from. The one that I picked out that I think I liked out of all of them, I mean, I like the ones that you just mentioned, Martin, there, but the one that I noted down was who's it that says it? So it is, what's his name? The gyro captain to Mad Max, and he says, "They've got you wrong. You're not a coward. Stupid maybe, but not a coward." And that's Bruce Spencer's character.
Yeah,
I do like that. I like that little bit of. I feel like it's weird. Like we were talking about, like the humor that was slotted into Day of the Dead on the previous episode we did, and the way like it's such a gory subject, and then there's a bit of humor. I feel like it's the same premise here. Like you're so intent, like invested in the intensified action sequences and like the death and everything in the explosions, and then all of a sudden these little lines, especially in this one with very little dialogue, you get that nice little witty send up, and then all of a sudden you're back in the deep again.
I actually like that conversation, you can call it, quote unquote. It's not really much of a conversation. There aren't too many, but
no,
where he's with the gyro captain, he goes through like a dead body, a corpse, and he's rummaging for like a bunch of stuff. He's got this, he's got that. And then he sees like he's got a shotgun shell, and so he opens up his shotgun and puts it in, and it turns out he never had any bullets in the shotgun. And I like the gyro captain who's like, you lying, he's like, And he goes, "You didn't even have any bullets." He's like, "I got one now." He goes, "Well, what if it's a dud?" And he points the gun right at him. He's like, "Do you want to find out?" I quite like that. I thought that was good.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Is that your favourite, Boaz? Or-
Yeah, I think that might be my favorite.
David, screenplay score for The Road Warrior.
Oh, I mean, personally, I don't know. It's a hard one, really,
Yeah.
because
It's pretty basic, I think. So
that's what I was going to say. Like, if I give it a low score, it's not because I don't think it's a good film.
Yeah.
I just think because of how basic the order of events is and the way it's all done. Like, basic isn't always a bad thing when it comes to a screenplay, by all means. But I think it's so simple and so straightforward that I can't give it like a high score for complexity.
Yeah.
I could give it a high score for enjoyability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I rewatch it, I'll be more interested in the visuals and the action than I will in like, oh, there are so many, there's stuff I haven't known about the plot. Do you know what I mean? That there's more depth or layers to the plot. I think there aren't that many layers to the plot. It's a pretty simple plot,
I mean, that whole religion thing I was talking about, I feel like that is still quite a stretch to come to.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty big stretch because I don't think there's really much to go on. But I think even if that's true, that would be the only like really big hidden theme I think that's in the film. Like,
complex theme that's hidden underneath.
Yeah, that there's some Jesus imagery, and I think that would be about it. But
yeah, so I think ultimately. It's going to sound really bad, but I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it a 7. Just give it a 7 because straight 7. I think because it's enjoyable. It's quite simple, straightforward. But like I say, if I watch it, like Boaz says, if I watch it again, I'll probably notice some other stuff which will change my mind. But yeah, like the only sort of complex thing that I think we can read into it.
You didn't watch it 3 times for preparation for the podcast? Let's go.
I mean, I watched the film once over, took notes, and then did various like writings and rewatchings of key scenes. That's my that's my MO personally, even with a new text, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, like in like a more enjoyable setting, then I'd watch it again then rather than the analytical side. But I just think. Yeah, no, a solid 7. I'd be happy with a 7.
I think something to add as well, which I think would be a really interesting experiment with a lot of George Miller Mad Max films, is the fact that, like, would it work if you turn the sound off? Would it still make sense if, no one's saying anything? And I think it probably would.
I think it would.
So I think that's quite a really great thing to notice. So... Yeah. And commendable as well. So I would go higher than a straight 7 personally. Like a 7.7, 9.
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, man. Let's go 7.7.
Okay. So I feel like, the film is fairly basic in a story sense, but like, it works in a pure cinema sense as well. Like if you,
a purely visual. Yeah.
If it was a silent film, it works pretty well. So
yeah, I can't really criticize it more like beyond its visuals really, because the visuals I absolutely adore the way it's shot, even for its low string shoe budget ways. Like I think it, like you say, if you turn the sound off, I absolutely believe and agree that you'd be able to tell what the hell was going on without any sound. So.
So acting then, I love the moment near the beginning where like Bruce Spence as the gyro captain and his head is like strapped to the seat and a shotgun is pointed to his head and Max's dog has a bone in his mouth, which is attached to the trigger, which firstly is just a great image, but I loved like Mel Gibson's subtle smug expression hearing Bruce Spence suffer. I thought that was a great little moment from Mel Gibson. I think Mel Gibson he's just cool in this, he's got a real great stoic, gruff sensibility about his acting, and I really like him in this.
Yeah.
Bruce Spence is another standout for me as the gyro captain, as we've kind of said a little bit. He's just this like Weasley untrustworthy character that Max needs his help from, but and I think he works so well against Mel Gibson's very silent, gruff Max, and I found his pink Converse funny too, and with his yellow jogging bottoms.
I also liked his pink Converse as well. I also thought they were quite fetching, quite interesting to see from a costume point of view, and just a general. It really does show like what sort of a zany character he is really at the end of the day. And like obviously Mel Gibson's the guy we're going to follow in this, and he's going to be the one that I think ultimately Mel Gibson's the one that's like up there for me. He's like, it's a bit like Michael Caine and Italian Job. He's the main character. He's the main one for me. Yeah. But in terms of supporting characters, Bruce Spence, really good. I keep forgetting the poor guy's name. The guy in the gimp suit. What's his name again?
Wes.
Vernon Wells.
That's the one. Yes. And Vernon Wells. Interesting character in terms of costuming, especially because we've already made the jokes already, and I'll say I haven't had a chance to say that it looks like the post-apocalyptic version of what would happen to the Gimp from Pulp Fiction if he escaped.
Yeah, I think that's
that's just my little piece on that guy. Yeah. But personally, like he's down there for me in terms of like character, not because like he's terrible or anything, but like I'm more invested in Mel Gibson after because I did actually watch the first Mad Max before we watched this, and I enjoyed like his journey, so that's the one that I'm invested in.
The most acting that he gets to do is to just like scream like a sissy like every couple of minutes you see him.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting what we were kind of what we were talking about in directing, and I think it comes into acting as well with the bad guys, is the fact that like it's this balancing of tone thing of the bad guys acting, Wes and Humongous and some of the other guys. It's very over the top and very, very dramatic. And I feel like if you don't have a lot of the darker tones that happens in this, it would just seem ridiculous and stupid. And I think that is very much the same thing to be said with the acting here as well. You need a lot of darkness to ground those ridiculous performances, and also like with Mel Gibson, you need him to be just cool for someone to relate to really carry you through this crazy world. You find that with a lot of these type of films, the hero is not bland, but just like he's got to be cool, got to be relatable in a crazy world.
He's a little bit less, I don't want to say two-dimensional, he's a little less three-dimensional, but in a way he's two-dimensional to an extent that his purpose is to be the guy that you follow, to be cool, to look great, and ultimately take you through the action, but not necessarily all the time be the character that you're like, gee, he's the most inspiring. He gives the most inspiring speeches. Like he's really poignant in his acting from like a speech point of view or like a monologue or anything like that. Ultimately the point of this is it's an 80s flick set in the post-apocalyptic Australia with a load of weird people dressed up in some very questionable outfits. So you've got to have at least one guy that the audience can be like, I want to be that guy.
Yeah, and also with like Mel Gibson's acting, like he doesn't give you a lot emotionally at all. No. And I feel like it goes into this more of an anti-hero aspect of the film with his character that you don't get too much. Because if he is slightly more emotional, more relatable in that sense, then it becomes even more basic. So it kind of it's interesting that like Mel Gibson, keeps his hands to his chest kind of thing, and keeps his emotions tight, and like brings a lot of moral complexity in there as well, which I think is really interesting in this post-apocalyptic world, which works really well.
I think the image that really sums him up for me really is the one that you see the most when you like try and Google like facts for like extra like information like behind the scenes stuff, and it comes up as like Mad Max 2. And it's the one that sticks with me the most is the image of him with the dog walking behind him where he's holding the gun. That image, I think they used it for the poster, I think. I'm pretty sure they used it as a poster shot or anything. It might even just be a poster shot, and my memory might be tricking me. But that's the sort of shot that when I think of like Mel Gibson as Mad Max, that's the one that sticks in my head. He looks cool, looks like he's ready to take on the world. And whilst he's a man of very few words, his mannerisms just convey that sense of authority, and he just wants to get the job done. He's got that essence of like Terminator about him, but without the whole cyborg shit going on.
So we all go in Mel Gibson for favourite performance?
Yeah, I think so.
Or anyone else?
Yeah, I think Mel Gibson with Bruce
Yeah.
Spencer's a close second, but Mel Gibson is the top one.
Yeah, very close second. Cool. So acting score, David, what are you going for?
I would say, again, even though it's a film with very few words and need for dramatic performance in terms of its dialogue, I don't know. I'd probably say I'm going to say like a 7.6, maybe 7.6.
Cool.
Okay. Boaz, what should we go for? I think, Mel Gibson does enough to carry you through this. I think he's still really, really good.
Yeah.
And Spence, who plays the gyro captain, again, he's just a really great odd coupling with him.
Kind of funny. So it's like Mel is the straight man, and he's like, the more stupid,
yeah, a little bit.
comedy foil.
I think what brings it down a bit is kind of just Wes and the other gang. Like,
I would actually say most of the other cast sort of bring it down. Like, so yeah, I would say Wes and
even the good guys in the compound.
To be honest, they're just there. Like they're not bad, but I'm just saying, they're okay. You know what I mean? Like, I guess most of them don't have anything much to really say. But I can't remember any like really strong performances from really anybody in the compound.
Should we go 7.7 again? Same with screenplay, or one up, one or down? I'm thinking 7.7.
I think I prefer the screenplay. I think that's where like the heart is. Obviously, is the screenplay. Well, actually, I'd say the directing is like really up there.
Yeah,
that's definitely the best thing. Yeah, maybe a 7.5.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that, actually.
Yeah, I just, I think the acting is good for what it is, but it's not like the main draw of the film. I think the main draw is, it's as you said, it can just be a silent movie. Most of it is conveyed just through the action and through, the stuff that happens, I think,
Well, yeah, it's conveyed of what the action of what the characters are actually doing, not necessarily what's happening on their faces, I would say.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I think 7.5 is a pretty good score in terms of there's only so much of Wes's arse you can watch. Like, fucking hell, his arse cheeks is out again. Jesus.
Not again.
Different angle, please, George. Come on.
Yeah.
The front of his body would be lovely. More of that.
Yeah, and at least if he wore like bloody boxer shorts and not like, is he wearing a thong?
Yeah.
It's like, Jesus Christ, it's a bit much.
It's like he's trying to make like a post-apocalyptic Spartacus right now. I'm just like, I'm not here for it personally, but if that's what floats your boat, George, go for it.
Right, let's add up the scores then for Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior.
Ooh. Begin the countdown.
Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior gets 47.3. So The Road Warrior runs over Michael Caine in his Mini with the Italian Job with 43.5.
I mean, to be fair, he does have the bigger vehicle in this case, so that would literally make sense right now.
Yeah. Next episode, as Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 is out, we are talking animated films, so a big subject to choose from, just animated films. And we'll have guests again, a returning guest from the first overseas guest we ever had, and that's the World of Horror podcast with Christina and Max, so that's very exciting. David, thank you so much for coming on to our 100th episode. You're very welcome again in the future.
Thank you.
This is your opportunity again to talk about your podcast. And where can we find you?
Thank you very much there. Yes, so as you said, I'll just start off with, it's been an absolute pleasure coming on again, guys. I love doing the first episode, and this one has been nothing short of equally hilarious, hilarity and everything. I can't even put my words together straight now, but it's been great. But anyway, back to the main stuff. So yes, David Ingram, Take 97, the film podcast. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it. Any of the usual podcasting sites, you can find us on there. We've got an Instagram account and a Twitter account as well. Twitter's just like we just connect with you guys for the odd, sharing of the links and stuff. But Instagram is our home. And so at Take 97 Podcast and at Take_97 Podcast. That's on both of those there. But Instagram is where we do most of our interactions and where I will be posting links to this episode as well. I've already posted the ones to the last one as of the recording of this, and we share regular updates for pictures and stills from the films that are discussed on Take 97. But yeah, and there's polls and questionnaires if you want to get involved and suggest episode topics. And you never know, very soon, hopefully, depending on time schedules, I may be getting Boaz and Martin on to talk about a particular horror film. Little sneak peek for you. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, guys. And thank you for having me on your 100th. It's been an absolute pleasure. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the episodes these guys bring on the next 100, everyone.
Yeah, the pleasure is all ours, David. It's time to say goodbye. Goodbye, David.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dave.
And it's goodbye from the most brilliant co-host, Boaz Dix. Goodbye.
Thank you, man. You're not so bad yourself. Bye.
Thank you very much. One of very few compliments Boaz ever gives me.
It's the last time that's ever happening again.
Yep, I suspect so. And it's goodbye from me. I'm going to plan out the next 100 episodes. Bye-bye.
See you, dude.
That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off. Thank you.